Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
As is our custom, we'll go around and introduce ourselves before we begin the talk. I'd just like to say maybe take a breath between hearing the name before yours and then giving your name, just so we go slowly. My name is Ray Dyer.
Douglas Hall.
Michael Murphy.
George Hubbard.
Richard Hedden.
Michael Altshuler.
Marvin Snow.
Francisco Gonzalez. Ari Klein. Nobu Yamaji.
Mark Tilley.
Will Murdoch.
Peter Camarda.
David Margolis.
Daniel.
Sean Whedon.
Paul Shepard.
Patrick Letellier.
Dirk Dixon. Ron Weekler. Lee Robbins.
Chris Rousseff. David Axel.
John Kim. Jim Christrup.
Jim Stewart.
Cher.
Steve Carson. Peter Washburn. Peter Kearns.
Is anyone here for the first or second time? Two? Welcome. I'd like to remind the old-timers to welcome the newcomers after the talk. Today we have two members of our sangha who are going to talk about their spiritual past, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but I'll tell you their names, if I can remember. Carl Wolf and Joe Goode.
Good morning, thanks for being here. I've been anxious about this for months. And I've taken, notes galore over the last few weeks about, oh my goodness, what am I going to talk about? And I finally said, okay, I'm leaving them home. I'm just going to talk. Because what I think this is about, the Dharma Duo, is just to get to know each other a little bit in our own paths, and I figure I can do that by memory. I'm going to probably just give a little historical overview of who I am, because we come here every week. I know I do for many years, and we meditate for a half hour, and then I spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes at the social hour and have a tea and cookies, and I'm on my way, and really don't know who people are. I mean, I'm really honored to be sharing this morning with Joe, and it's funny, I didn't really know who he was, even though we meditated together for many, many months and years, perhaps, and lo and behold, check out his website and he's famous, It's like, and I've got my history as well. I've been a lawyer for 30 years in my own practice, and founder of the AIDS Legal Referral Panel, and early member of bailiff, and started the first law firm that was a co-sexual law firm in lesbian and gay community. I can go on with awards too, but that's not what Sunday mornings are about for me. It's just being here at the level of our spirit and our hearts. So it'll be hard in 20 minutes to give you a 56-year overview, but I'm going to try to sort of put some of the highlights out there for you. I was born and raised in Philadelphia and lived in the same house for 20 years. Very stable childhood. Jewish, but not very observant, but did the whole bar mitzvah thing and all of that. And went to the same elementary school for 8 years that I walked to every day. And my closest friends to this day are one of them I met in kindergarten, Ned, who I talk to all the time, and went to the same high school for 4 years, and those friends that I've made are still close in my life. Live in Oakland, and that's sort of one of the, I guess, aspects of my life that I realize looking back is that when I make a connection with people, it stays for whatever reason for a long, long time. And so anyway, went about my life, and I went to college at Penn State and was just doing what everybody did back then. I was not out at all that came in law school. And interesting, it was the first time that I ever lived by myself. It was my second year of law school. First time I ever lived alone. And within months of that, I came out. So it just is interesting to me. And within months also of me living alone again for the second time after I had my relationship of like 17 and a half years broke up, which was like the main relationship of my adult life back in 1998 is when Danny finally moved out. Within months of that, I got deeply into my Buddhist practice. But I learned to meditate back in 1970 when I was a junior in college. It was good enough for the Beatles, so the Maharishi was good enough for me, And so I got my $35 together and signed up for the Maharishi and learned how to do transcendental meditation and did that diligently for probably a year or so. And then for 25 years I would just come back to it in times of stress, but never really followed that practice. But I'm sure like most of us, there are times in life when you realize we're more than just this and our neurosis, and for me it's been in places of nature usually, where I'm just, there and alone and at a beautiful place, and everything else drops away and I just knew, But what really brought me into the Dharma, I think, was my grief. In short, the pain and the loss. I was the baby of 5 kids, and my 4 siblings were born between 1932 and 1936 in the heart of the Depression, and I was born 15 years later, a total accident. But my conditioning was that depression conditioning of not having enough and fear that around the corner was doom, and it just was a frightening place to be. And from my earliest memories and my beginnings of my consciousness at 6 or 7 years old, I realized that everybody I loved was going to die before me. because my parents were the age of my friends' grandparents. My siblings, my brother was 20 years older than me, and my youngest sister was 15 years older than me. And here I am, like a 6-year-old kid going, geez, I'm going to be alone. You know, this is scary. And still live with that. That's the conditioning sort of that I deal with when I sit quietly. But I didn't know it would turn out like it did, how much more serious those losses were going to be than just my family, because as it happened to many of us, we dealt with the AIDS epidemic, which was unbelievably devastating and just all-consuming grief. But also in about a 15-year period, those losses began to happen to me from the mid-'80s to the late 90s, where my parents died, and I lost my closest niece at age 30 to melanoma, and my brother died, and my sister died, and my best friends died, and 250 of my colleagues and people around me died. And in 1988, I got diagnosed with HIV after being in my relationship for 8 years at the time. And we both got tested simultaneously, and he was negative and I was positive. And that was, oh my God, changed my life, October 17th, 1988. And because of my conditioning, the darkness and depression became pretty overwhelming over those next 10 years. Besides the loss of everybody else, my T cells continued to drop, and even though I continued to work, and something was drawing me back into myself and my spiritual practice. And I was in psychotherapy, and I was blessed to have a psychotherapist when I would share with him to say, I really want to be meditating or getting back into that. Well, he would say, well, would it help you if we meditated here before we started therapy? I said, sure, at least I would get a half hour. And so for years, at 8:30 in the morning, I would meditate. I would go to therapy, we'd acknowledge each other, we'd sit down, and Dennis and I would meditate for a half hour, open our eyes, and do therapy for 50 minutes. And, as all of this just kept unfolding in my life, and then my relationship finally ended, and the seeds of it were just when we found out of our different statuses. But it took another 10 years for us, almost 9 or 10 years, to really finally make the break. So when I was alone again, right after I found out about HIV, Danny was my cheerleader. Oh my God, it got me into acupuncture. We found the Center for Attitudinal Healing up in Tiburon, and I got into an HIV support group. And there were probably about 20 of us in that core group. This was 1988, October of 1988, and by 1993 there were 4 of us left. All of us had died. It was, beyond comprehension. What was it that allowed me to be here? And on my way home one day from my group at the center, I stopped at a clean, well-lighted place in Larkspur and was browsing the bookstore and saw this book, Seeking the Heart of Wisdom, by Jack Kornfield and Joseph Goldstein. Something caught my eye. I read it. The receipt is still in the back. 1992. Pretty amazing. It stayed on my shelf, and I read pieces of it, but that was it. I read this book over the course of the next few years, and realized this made sense to me. The Buddhist teaching made total sense, and when I did it, and I read voraciously, especially after I broke up. I was by myself, and probably read, 50, 60 Buddhist books, in the course of a few years, just intellectually, and began to practice, and it all just made so much sense, and I was able to just realize that the Buddhist teachings, that the suffering isn't what happens to us in life, because that happens to all of us. I mean, my story is my story. I may have had more death than others or different things, but that is the same for all of us ultimately. It's how we respond to it and how we see it, and how we act in our lives that is the alleviator of the suffering. And the teachings just taught me that and worked, for me, because in the midst of all of that still, it's like, okay, I can still be happy. Things are pretty damn good. Ultimately, being back, reminding myself to come back to this moment, this present moment. And for years I was depressed, worried about dying and getting sick and, the future and all of that. And it was like darkness and blackness. But now, I still fall into that because that's just my conditioning, as is probably the same with a lot of us. But I can come back now after, multiple 5-night retreats and my own practice. When I remember, I just come back to this present moment and this breath and realize things are pretty damn good, ultimately. And just staying with that. It's been amazing, So that's sort of my story in a nutshell as to how I got here, and I fell in love with the Dharma. I mean, I think it's what happened. Just reading it and practicing it and meeting other practitioners and realizing the depth of it, but also the simplicity of it at the same time. And so it's been a real blessing and a joy. And I just feel like the future for me anyway, I want to go deeper if I can. I want to take more time for some solitude and retreats, because that's been helpful for me. And we're so blessed here in the Bay Area to have so many resources, even our little sub-specialty resources of LGBT places. It's amazing. So most of my practice has been within that realm, even with some great lesbian and gay teachers. I want to close with just a little quote that I read. This is from the head of the patriarch of Cambodian Buddhism, and he died just earlier this year, Maha Ghosananda, and this sort of speaks to me as to what the spiritual practice is about in my life. He says here that if we cannot be happy in spite of our difficulties, what good is our spiritual practice? And to me, that's what it's all about, because there's no way we're getting rid of our difficulties. I mean, that's a given. That I recognized early on that I could relate to certainly the two characteristics out of the three in Buddhism, and those being that life is unsatisfactory and contains a lot of suffering, and the second being that everything is impermanent. Those easy for me to see. That made sense. The third I work on constantly, that there is no real self. But I see it more and more as I continue to practice, that it's just a whole bunch of conditions and causes that make up everything and that pass and change constantly. And so to get hooked on them and to attach to them is what causes the real suffering. And so my practice is to continue to realize that and recognize that, and to let those things go, and not try to hold on to them. Ajahn Chah, who was the Thai forest master, who taught a lot of the people of brought Buddhism to the West, like Jack Kornfield and Joseph and many more, says that if you let go a little, you'll have a little freedom. If you let go a lot, you'll have a lot of freedom. And if you let go completely, you'll have complete freedom. So I think that's sort of where I need to keep coming back to, of realizing just let go, not hold on to it, and it'll all be okay. So, thanks.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be up here with Carl because he's such a mensch. It grounds me just having him nearby. But I have to have notes. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this otherwise. I thought I would start by talking about why it's profound for me to be here, and not just here, up here, but here, and why I was resistant to being up here, because those two things kind of cover a lot of territory. I also started meditating in the 70s with TM. We talked about this before, and I think I had the desire to be involved with something that transcended kind of the banality of life and the difficulties of life and the suffering, I guess. But it never occurred to me that it was something that involved community, that it was something that you did with other people. It really was something that you did by yourself. And I was a young artist, and so I was. I think I was looking at it as a way to make myself just a little more exotic and a little more attractive, because I would have this spiritual dimension, and maybe I would even wear a turban at some point. And I'm not saying that was the wrong reason. It was the reason. It was part of the reason. But it was very much a practice. Very much like, as Carl said, that I came back to. It wasn't a daily thing, but it was when I needed it, I would come back to it. And for me, it was really only just a few years ago that I decided that I would take the very big step, which was a huge step for me, to actually come into a room with people, gay men my own age, which is kind of profound. I'm a choreographer, so I deal with a lot of beautiful 20-year-olds. And I'm kind of, the paternal authority figure. It's nice to come in here and to not be that figure, and to not be a figure at all. I think my resistance to being up here is that there's a very comfortable persona of the artist, of the successful artist who, that I've created this monster, and I can live within that. And most of my life I do. It's very comfortable for me. It's very protected. I'm actually a pretty shy person. But when I'm in that persona and I'm up in front of people and I'm talking about my work and I'm getting all those gold stars placed on my forehead, I'm solid. I'm good. I know how to do that. And that's comfortable, and yet it's not very revealed. It's not very present with a lot of parts of who I am. So I was resistant to being up here because I thought I don't really want to, in this context, I don't want to yet create another place where I'm Joe Goode, because I do that all the time. But since I've been here, I think what I've realized, why it's more profound even than I expected, is that there's so many brilliant, contentious, troubled, sublime, sensual, interesting people in this room. As we all are, of course. I mean, that would be probably true in any group of people that you would really look at. And it's kind of profound to just be a listener and to just be in the midst of it all, and to hear that there is all this complication and all this difficulty and all these obstacles, and yet people are managing on some level to lead a spiritual life and to have a tie to something more considered, more profound, an approach, a way of living, even if it comes out of dire necessity of, a survival technique of trying to hold on in a crazy world. And it doesn't really matter. It's still just interesting that we do it. But I thought, because it's been so much the arc of my life, I thought I'd talk a little bit about the path of stellar individualism, which I think is the life of the artist in the West. I think it's a little bit sick, a little bit confused. The art world rewards the maverick, the individual. The art world very much fosters this myth of genius, that the artist is somehow a privileged person who has sort of a direct phone line to God, and they have this communication, and then the rest of us, the unwashed masses, kind of benefit from the crumbs that come, that fall down from the pedestal. But we don't have. It's a secondary experience that we're having, and it's kind of vertical. We're looking up at the artist, who is somehow smarter and more sensitive and more powerful, and we're getting the reflection or something. The ricochet of God is coming off of him. I think that's pretty troubling and certainly something that I bought right into, because I came from a very dysfunctional family, very alcoholic, absent father and crazy mother, and it was a refuge being an artist and getting all those gold stars, somewhere where I could excel, somewhere where I could be special and noticed and take up space. It was great, and I loved it right away. And also there really is, and this is the reason why I continue to do it, there is something transcendent about making art. There is something about spending your time noticing. It's outside of yourself in a certain way. Noticing how the body works, noticing the mechanics of it, noticing language, noticing relationships between people and the way they turn their heads. And I spend my whole day looking at that kind of stuff and making something out of it. In a way, I'm not in my body when I'm doing that. I'm not me. The burden of me is kind of released. So it's kind of the opposite of the role of the artist that I have to play in society. The actual fact of what I do is this very, I disappear in it. I'm just noticing stuff. And it feels like a, great life to live. I love it. But the role is troubling me, and I think it troubles me because I do it so well. There's a cycle with the gold stars that once you start getting them, I've been dancing since I was 7, so I've got a lot of gold stars accrued here. That you realize that you can become known, and so you want to become known, and then you become known,
and you want to become more known, and then you become more known, and you just want to be unassailably recognized as something fucking great. You want to be a monolith. You want to be this giant thing that cannot be budged, that cannot be got around. And it's so seductive. I mean, it's an incredible addiction. And it's very, you become infantilized in a certain way. Because you're still that little boy trying to get the gold star. I mean, your whole career is built on that. There's always another award. This year I got a Guggenheim, which is a big deal to get a Guggenheim Award in the art world. And I thought, but I don't have the MacArthur yet. This is really summed up for me when I was asked to teach at UC Berkeley, which I love. It's a great gig, and they wanted a real artist, not an academic, to sort of give this department of theater, dance, and performance studies a kind of the aroma of a real artistic thing. And so, and I was happy to do that, and they gave me tenure, and they whatever you want, and I only teach one semester, and it's great. And so I got this job, and I was really, because there are these moments when you're getting the gold star where you feel unassailably fantastic. I mean, you are a monolith. And I walked into the parking office to get a parking pass, and the lady behind the desk said, well, you can get a C pass because you have tenure. And I thought, great, that's great. You have special lots. Parking is a big deal at Berkeley. And I said, well, does that mean that I'll have my own spot? And she said, well, do you have a Nobel Prize? Then I just, there it was again. You just fall from grace so fast. And this has been, it is comical, and thank God we can all laugh at it. But at the same time, it's very real. It's very. I have my own company which bears my name, and I have this incredible job at Berkeley where I'm kind of the boss of what I do and what a lot of other people do. And I've created this little empire around this artistic persona, and it's great, and I love it. And at the same time, I feel very separated from things. There's no one to answer to. There's, very little conversation about how it happens. And I think the thing that I'm working on so much in my own practice is how to not rely on that very fragile ecology of being a star, because it goes away as much as more than it comes. I mean, it's a slippery slope. And I'm particularly interested in Tonglen practice. The real benefit of empathy, it seems to me, and this, partly because I'm a theatrical person, I like the idea of feeling what the other feels. I mean, playing that part in a way of taking on, really seeing, really feeling what someone else feels. That to me is very attractive, and if I can do it, when I can do it, I find that I'm participating in life in a different way. I'm not seeing myself through any particular lens, and I'm not asking to be seen. I'm not hiding behind any particular role. I'm just really seeing who people are. So it's something that I've really been trying to cultivate and trying to get better at, and it's a long journey. I want to read a little bit of Pema Chodron, who I love, and I have all of her, or just the titles of her books. When Things Fall Apart, Start Where You Are. This one is Comfortable with Uncertainty. I mean, just the titles alone make me happy. So it's a very short little thing. This is actually called Start Where You Are Again and Again. Start where you are. This is very important. Tonglen practice and all meditation practice is not about later, when you get it all together and you're this person you really respect. You may be the most violent person in the world. That's a fine place to start. That's a very rich place to start. Juicy, smelly. You might be the most depressed person in the world, the most addicted person in the world, the most jealous person in the world. You might think there are no others on the planet who hate themselves as much as you do. All of that is a good place to start. Just where you are, that's the place to start. What you do for yourself, any gesture of kindness, any gesture of gentleness, any gesture of honesty and clear seeing toward yourself will affect how you experience your world. In fact, it will transform how you experience the world. What you do for yourself, you're doing for others. And what you do for others, you're doing for yourself. When you exchange yourself for others in the practice of Tonglen, it becomes increasingly uncertain what is out there and what is in here. So that is something that I'm really trying to live by. And this week I looked through my Pema books because she has a quote that I love, that I actually used in a speech recently, where she says, abandon all hope of fruition. I mean, this idea that, I feel like I've spent most of my life waiting to become a genius, a star, unassailably, monolithically, the artist that you better get out of his way. You're always waiting for that to happen or to complete happening. You're waiting for completion. You're waiting to become that thing. But you don't ever become that thing. And you're really in danger of spending your life waiting. So that's a really powerful and scary thing for me. So I'm thinking about it a lot. And this idea of abandon all hope of fruition, that you're not going to get there, that really all you have is exactly where you are, is really powerful for me. And I say this little quote to myself before I meditate in the morning. It helps me, just that one line. Well, I've exhausted my notes. It seems I still have a little bit of time left. I have one more reading. Why don't I just read it? And then we'll, I guess, take questions. Does that sound good? Taking refuge in the Buddha means that we are willing to spend our life reconnecting with the quality of being continually awake. Every time we feel like taking refuge in a habitual means of escape, we take off more armor, undoing all the stuff that covers over our wisdom and our gentleness and our awake quality. We're not trying to be something we aren't. Rather, we're reconnecting with who we are. So when we say, I take refuge in the Buddha, that means I take refuge in the courage and the potential of fearlessness, of removing all the armor that covers this awakeness of mine. I am awake. I will spend my life taking this armor off. Nobody else can take it off because nobody else knows where all the little locks are. Nobody else knows where it's sewed up tight, where it's going to take a lot of work to get that particular iron thread untied. You have to do it alone. The basic instruction is simple. Start taking off that armor. That's all anyone can tell you. No one can tell you how to do it because you're the only one who knows how you've locked yourself in there to start. So I guess we'll take questions. I will make a shameless plug. I just happen to have a show at Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, which is downtown, right across the street from MoMA. It's an installation, and it's actually kind of embedded in this piece is some of my Tonglen practice. It's about empathy. It's called Humansville. It's an installation, a performance installation, so you actually walk through it. I think it's going to be really an engaging thing. It's an hour long. There are 2 shows a night, and we're only letting 200 people in per show, so it's a limited audience, but so that they can see it, because it is a walk-through thing. So if you're interested, here are some flyers. I brought this. So maybe questions or comments?
It's an inadvertent comment. It's just a moment of appreciation, Joe. I recently, 2 or 3 days ago, got a visit from my nephew, and for whatever reasons, he's had spectacular success in the world and gets to go out and meet presidents of countries and stuff like that. And I remember the show I saw you in which you were relating to a very young child. And in the day, he was here for 2 days, and he and his wife spent 1 whole day with me. What got to me was just this incredible intensity of love that he had for me and that I had for him. And everything else about his life just completely disappeared. And it was exactly like when he was 2 or 3, and I went and played with him. He's 38 now, has 3 children of his own. But it really doesn't make any difference. It's just that one little piece. And when you start to spend, all of a sudden it came to me that yearning I had for connection, I got to experience from a distance when I saw you doing that little performance with that child. And I thought, support.
A question. When I got to have these guys for dinner last Sunday, and we had a wonderful. You should all envy me since I got the longer version of these stories. You both get dressed to do your jobs. You know, I mean, you're a trial lawyer. I mean, is there a ritual? I mean, what is your awareness when you put on your persona? I'm just curious. You know, sort of your power tie drag. You know, does that speak to you? I mean, do you choose your ties per case?
Well, I change in the morning sometimes, you know. I put it on and go, oh, that doesn't look good. You know, that's not what I need, you know. I need my sincere blue, not this Jerry Garcia one today. You know? But there is some truth to that, you know, like putting on that persona. I struggle with that a lot, wondering, you know, why am I in this job? You know, I should be doing something much more nurturing than, you know, fighting other big egos and insurance companies day in and day out, you know. But on the other side of it, I go, when I am able to feel like I've gotten some justice, that feels really amazing, you know, helping, you know, my clients get some semblance of justice, which is so oftentimes rare and sometimes is not gotten when it's deserved. So, as the years have gone on and my practice has gotten deeper, I try to breathe into loving kindness and compassion to the people who are troublesome, and it makes it a little easier, realizing that they too are in their own little stories and difficulties, and I can listen more openly, but still hold my ground. So it's an interesting dilemma in some ways of putting on that suit and taking on that, you know, walking in my office door and then taking on that role, which is somewhat different than my nature sometimes.
To answer it for me, I mean, obviously I don't wear a power suit. I wear radial sweatpants, but I'm actually part of this consciousness about wanting to get out of the role of artist. Really want to get out of the role completely. It feels so threadbare at this point. I mean, I took all the black turtlenecks out of my wardrobe, and I just don't want to be seeing myself that way or pretending that that's a safe place for me. So I find that I have to slip into a kind of like a subversive almost. I have to slide into situations and not announce myself and not wear the thing that's going to be the thing that artists wear and not have that way of presenting myself. Even with my own company, or people I've worked with for many, many years, to defer that role, just one of them maybe, to share the conversation more, to let them lead more, to find ways to not be the one. Because it's not, it's such horseshit, really. I mean, nothing is done by yourself. I mean, it's absolutely a conversation, and it comes out of creating a culture of a workshop that's creative where things get made. It's not the one at all. So, but they want me to be the one too, because that's a protected role for them as well. They know where they are in that setup. It's a lot less, it's much less clear when we're all kind of equal. It's like, woo. So, but I'm really trying not to do it.
Just a comment kind of on the gold stars. I mean, both of you seem to have gotten a lot of gold stars in your respective fields, and some people have not gotten a lot of gold stars, I guess including myself in my life. And what wisdom do you have for those who have not gotten a lot of gold stars that somehow feel like getting the gold stars might be some, feeling like that might have something to do with happiness, that you need to get more gold stars? I mean, it seems to me it's easier once you've gotten them to say, well, this isn't it, and I'm going to go for something else. But if you've been in that situation where you haven't gotten a lot of gold stars, it's hard to kind of give up the desire.
But I think they come in a lot of different forms. And I look at my friends. One of my best friends is has a very ordinary kind of career, and not one that he's passionate about, but a job. But he's the perfect son, and the perfect friend, and throws a hell of a dinner party. And those are gold stars for him. I mean, he doesn't see them that way, of course, because that his name isn't in the newspaper. But and I look at his gold stars and think, God, I wish I could be just a halfway decent son. I wish I could cook an egg. I wish I could have any of the attributes that he has. So I think gold stars come in a lot of different forms, and that most people do have them in one form or another. It's just the job is to not become a slave to them, not to let them rule your life of when am I going to get the next one, or to feel unimportant and useless if you haven't gotten one in a while. So I actually envy him and my other friends who don't have that over their heads all the time. I don't know, do you want to add something to that?
The gold stars, they come from outside. So they're, I don't want to demean them because it's sort of recognition for, what you may have done, but, the real gold stars and the real happiness is within us, and the small kindnesses that we do and the love that we have in our life, and it's not a Guggenheim or a Nobel or a certificate. It's how I look at that, and nice to have it, and you put it on the wall, and nice to get the recognition, but that passes very quickly, and then you're left with your own heart and what you do with your life. So I'm sure you have plenty of gold stars.
Yeah, if there ever is an instance, a particular instance that either one of you can remember where you were in the role the star or the role of the artist or the lawyer, the great lawyer, and then there was a point at which there was an intersection between that and just the mundane, the horribly ordinary. And I would imagine, was there a kind of crisis of sorts? Did you ever have a crisis of the ordinary? You see what I mean? And if so, has that informed your experience, or did that in any way change your relationship to this role that you both described?
Yeah, it does. It does for me. I mean, because I deal with, I run my own business too, so I'm a business person and paying the bills and dealing with, everything and doing the mundane stuff of day-to-day operations, and it's like, oh God, it's exhausting, but it's all part of it. So it's like, oh well, I mean, and I'm at this stage in my life where I would like to slow down a little bit, and get away from that high-powered, spotlight and stress of that kind of job. But so there is an intersection there between just the day-to-day doings of living, and then the profession and the role of lawyer and the power that entails, and the feeling of success when you quote win, but it gets all so complicated that sometimes winning feels like losing, and losing feels like winning, and the mundane feels like wonder, and the fabulous feels like not much at all.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think I'm not very good at the ordinary. That's the territory where I'm not so good. So for me, when that intersection happens, the discomfort is around the ordinary for me. And I remember coming here the first time and trembling, standing out there with my teacup, forcing myself, I'm going to stay for 5 minutes and try to be ordinary. and talk to people, and it's just not, it's without my role, without all my accoutrement, I don't really know how to do it, and that's very, very troubling to me. But it's really true. I mean, and the intersection, no matter how fabulous you are, the intersection with the ordinary is just like every second. It doesn't matter, what's going on or how fancy you think you've become. It's right there to remind you. Just the body is, you fart or something. I mean, we're in this process of decay all the time, and there's so many ways that you get reminded constantly that you're not there.
What is the symbolism of a fedora in your work?
The fedora? It's probably an attempt to be ordinary. I don't know. For many years it was a cowboy hat. And a lot of cowboy characters. So I don't know. I really don't know, Don. I'm not being coy. It's probably, the dancing body. I mean, you just want them to be naked because they're so beautiful. But it's nice to humanize them too, somehow, with actual clothing, so they're not just exotic creatures from another world, but they're actually people. So I think the hats and the
There's so many ways you can wear it and do things.
It indicates character. Yeah.
We should probably wind down. Will you guys be around for questions and comments? Do we have a host today?
I'm the host today.
Yeah, so I brought some refreshments. And
I'll go through the airline spiel here. So we also have a Dharma Duo for people who are new. That means a financial contribution, $5 to $8 if you can. If not, that's fine too. Along with the refreshments, if you use a teacup, be sure and wash it out and put it back where you got it. And usually a group gets together for lunch afterwards that sort of congregate by the door out there. So if you want to go to lunch with some folks, that's always fun. And we have a sign-up sheets out here if you want to get, be on our mailing list and email stuff. You can do that.
Do we have any announcements?
Next week we're going to have a discussion, and the week after that I want you guys to start thinking about it. We're going to have a poetry day. So think about what of the poems that you love, one that you could share here, that illuminate your practice or really speak to you that you would like to share. And then if you could bring a typewritten, copy, then I'll scan them and we can put them on the website or somehow share them. And we're going to be sort of exploring expressive and voice stuff in the next couple of months. There's going to be a choir teacher who's going to talk about vocalization from different parts of the body, and we'll sing some codependent hymn from Broadway, the Dharma Broadway, and how that can lift the spirits. We're going to have a Buddhist chanting guy and a Qigong teacher who's going to use hearing sounds, explore sounding for healing. These are all just different ways of approaching mindfulness and awareness. So, but especially on this poetry day, which will be June 3rd. So start going through your collection and thinking what you would love to share. So, thank you guys.
Is next week Carnival?
No, I think we had. Oh, I don't know. We had Cinco de Mayo.
Right. Carnival, whenever that occurs, it can be extraordinarily difficult to get here.
Yeah. February.
That's in February.
In February.
Yeah.
There's a carnival weekend next weekend.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Right from the weekend. I'm pretty sure.
I thought it was in Bill 39.
So just for clarification, next week,
we're going to have a discussion.
Oh.
The poetry thing is in 2.
Okay.
I have been thinking for his show already. The event of the year for me, if I've ever seen Joe. David, you can testify to that. Is there other people who've ever seen his performances?
Oh, I have.
Well, I think it'd be very nice if we had a theater. It's the 31st through the 2nd.
And on the 9th, and then the 7th through the 9th.
7th to the 9th. That's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Thursday, Friday?
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And 2 performances a day, 7, 30, and 9. Any suggestions for a good time for a group of us to go?
that's in June.
That's
Yeah,
very, that's
coming
very
right up,
close.
May 31st.
May
Yeah.
31st.
Opens May
First
31st.
one.
I'm going on June 1st. If anyone else wants to come, me and my friend will be there.
You want to try to have it on June 1st?
I'm just saying, I'm going on June 1st. If anyone wants to come,
What do you think?
June
1st?
What time?
I think we should do this after.
Yes.
Yeah, but, well,
Do
okay.
you want to be the point person to organize?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's a Friday.
it's a Friday.
I have one announcement.
If you're interested, come up and see me. So.
There's an updated GDF directory next to the Dharma Duo in the box. Feel free to take a copy. And just a reminder to newcomers to sign up if you want to be in the next GDF directory, if you want to receive the newsletter either by email or by snail mail. Do you have any other announcements? Yes.
I need to interview someone who's in their 60s for a school project. So if any of you are willing to talk to me for about 30 minutes or even 20 minutes, would greatly appreciate it.
Is it a certain topic?
Recreation.
in your 60s?
Yeah, recreation in your 60s.
It only gets better.
It's just about the Jared here.
Darren's not here this week, but I'll plug Tuesday nights. Darren Little hosts a meditation group, usually focused on metta meditation. Tuesdays at 7:30 at his home. If you want details, you can see me.
Any others before we close? Okay, we can gather. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, and live believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.